you sort of build the plane as you're flying it. You sort of often leap into things maybe without necessarily thinking through all the consequences. And I think that's a strength, right? Because if you did think too much about the consequences, you probably would just be paralyzed and not do anything. So
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Sail with Fire. I am your podcast host, Phoenix Ha, CEO and co-founder of my favorite first-party data attribution optimization platform. Today, we bring on another juggernaut in the space who happens to be a badass female. It's just an extra notch just to say that. But I am so excited to introduce Jessie Healy to the pod. Say hello to the crowd.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here.
Okay, well, awesome. We always do our formal introduction. Let's do it. So, Jessie, over the course of her career, she spent $50 million in digital advertising for brands like Etsy, Real Player, Farfetch, Totter and Tumble, Illab, Bouchin, I can't pronounce everything, so I apologize in advance, Candy Kittens, and cracking the code of creating profitable ads and growth strategies that truly convert. By the way, in 2018, she founded Webtopia, a UK-based e-commerce growth agency, scaling it to 7 figures before its acquisition by Dyer Holdings in 2023, which is huge, so exciting. And now she consults full-time and runs an accelerator for early-stage e-commerce brands, helping 25 ambitious businesses master the growth strategies needed to become the next generation of iconic brands. So, Jessie, with that beautiful intro, welcome to the podcast.
thank you.
Do you remember how we kind of got in contact, other than the introduction from Rich? Do you kind of remember how we crossed paths a little bit?
No, I actually don't. I've got a terrible memory.
Yeah, you're fine. So, funny thing in the space is there are so many women in D2C, but I don't know if there's enough platformed. There's not enough in the space that are really known, and you are one of them, though. And it was funny, I came into the space and there were just specific names like Sarah Levinger, Jessie Healy, Molly Pittman, all of which I'm very blessed to say are friends of mine now and I get to have conversations with. But you were speaking at events that I was in tandem speaking at. And it was only a matter of time that we actually formally crossed paths. And thanks to one of my agency partners, Right Left Agency for AdBeacon, introduced us to you, Jessie. And I was like, so synergistic. So really happy we got to do this.
That's amazing. And Molly Pittman, she's been one of my guiding stars since way back in the very early stages of my Facebook ad career. And I'm just always loved following her. So that's cool that we're kind of in the same crew.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was actually just a heartwarming moment. I took a picture with Molly a year ago and I posted on my social media, and a male media buyer commented the D2C world is smiling right now. And it just made me happy because people are rooting women on. I don't really see it as a negative thing. I think that is a positive thing. So to be able to have this conversation with you is far past gender, but it is something to be said. I'm really grateful for you to be here. So, Jessie, we're going to dive into failures, but before we do that, kind of one of our little icebreakers that we do here is we often realize that our spouses or family members don't exactly know what we do for work. They pretend they're those from what, but they don't. So if you could, if I was at a barbecue and your partner came up to me and said, "Hey, Phoenix, I need you to meet Jessie. She's this." What would that person say?
And so funny. She asked my son, who's 7, the other day, "What does mommy do?" And he was like, "But they've been on your computer." When he was like, "Blah, blah, blah, advertising. Blah, blah, advertising." Wow. So basically do blah, blah, advertising. But no, 7-year-olds aside, and I tend to so what would he say? I mean, what I tend to say to people who I think know nothing about our industry, I just say, I do those ads, when you're scrolling Instagram and you see products that you might want to buy. That's me. Me and my team do those ads.
That's good. That's a good way to do it. it's funny because right, I used to do what you do. It's also very rare to find someone in the space that also does media buying specifically, like not just creative, but really focuses on the data side of things. But I'm on the attribution side, so it's even drier. And my sister, who is in a completely different, she's in the medical industry, she'll be like, yeah, she tracks people's information. So intrusive. And you're like, no. Like, I don't want to dominate. Yeah, 100%. But, those people that are in our lives that know the Jessie Healy, like the day to day, often it's such a like heartwarming introduction when you do hear what they say, because then the part of it is like, oh, that's really sweet. That they kind of figure it out. And part of it is they just talk about who you are. So Fall and Fail with Fire, this podcast, we really talk about who you are. You have incredible success. That is a given. And that's like a precursor to being on this platform. But I think also too, with the success always comes failures. There has to be this like, trudge up the mountain type of moment for you, whether it be multiple moments, personal, financial, professional, whatever it is. If you would bless us with a story or something that's fresh off your mind, a failure that turned into a fire, which was a catalyst for change.
Yeah. So I have a good one I think that just sprung to mind right away when you talked about the topic. So I think as an entrepreneur, I think I'm probably quite typical in the sense that it's like you sort of build the plane as you're flying it. You sort of often leap into things maybe without necessarily thinking through all the consequences. And I think that's a strength, right? Because if you didn't think too much about the consequences, you probably would just be paralyzed and not do anything. So similarly to actually starting the business in the first place, you probably go in there with quite a lot of optimism and don't think too much about the potential downsides. But yeah, so in typical fashion, so I started the agency in London, UK, where I had lived for, at that point, around 10 years. So I moved to the UK when I was in my early 20s, and which is a pretty common thing for Kiwis, I'm from New Zealand, to do. And I'd lived there, made my life there. My partner was British and had our child there. But we always had this plan to move back to New Zealand. Well, for me to move back, for them to move there the first time. Because we thought it would be a cool place for my son to grow up, like a little bit better than a big city. So anyway, that was always on the plan. So when I built the agency, I built it as fully remote. That was always kind of the plan from the start. And then COVID hit, and like being a fully remote agency in the UK became like infinitely more acceptable and accepted. So I was like, well, we're sticking to the plan. But what I hadn't kind of factored in really was like the growth of my agency. So from the start, it just grew really fast. I think from the start, we had a little bit of a different positioning from other agencies. We were always like creative focused. So we were never just like that agency that was like, send us your ads and we'll run them for you. We were always like, okay. I mean, we didn't have the term creative strategy back then, but we would put together creative strategies for all of our clients. And that meant that our results were really good, and clients also like appreciated, I guess, the extra effort. Made us stand out, and I think that then the catalyst for growth. But yes, so we were growing really fast. Then COVID hit, we grew really fast again, and we were at a team of about 20 at this time when I was kind of like deciding to move. And the pandemic as well kind of like galvanizes you to take action and make changes in your life. Well, it did for a lot of people. So anyway, so in the height of all this massive growth, I decided to move. And this was the kind of failure or mistake. I decided to move to the other side of the world from the UK and 12 hours time difference. So like to put it in context, 12 hours time difference, it's so difficult. It means that when I wake up in the morning, like say I wake up at like 7:38 and then I get to my desk by 8:30 a.m. That's once my son's off to like school or daycare. It's now at like 8:30 p.m. in the UK. So like none of my team want to talk to me at this point. So I can't really talk to them until later in the day. So when do they come online? They come online at 8 p.m. my time or 9 p.m. my time. So I finished my day and I've got to stay up to talk to them because I didn't hire them to work all hours. I've always, my agency was always about work-life balance and like not getting people to work outside of hours. We were ushering in the 4-day work week as well, which was something that we were really proud of like paying people full time, but paid people full time, but requiring them to work 4 days a week instead of 5. Just a whole lot of productivity benefits to that. And the agency still operates on that basis. So to suddenly say to people, you have to meet me at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. your time so that I can like have a meeting in my day, it just wasn't like something I wanted to be doing. So that was me. Like I was doing all my meetings with my team or with clients at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. Now, I thought that I was a night owl before I did this. Because, I was always like I was a bit of a party girl when I was younger. I loved going out at night, all the fun, But turns out I don't want to do hard meetings with my team about difficult issues. So this was by the time I moved, my agency had a leadership team in place. So we had like a commercial director, a head of operations, and like a head of paid strategy. But that's 3 direct reports that I had to meet with. And actually I had a head of Google at that time as well. So yeah, I had 4 direct reports that I had to meet with. So it's at least 4 late at night meetings. Then there was like sometimes client crises, client fires. I had to meet with clients, and it was always when it was a fire or a crisis. So it was never like just this fun meeting about, how great their results are, because had very deliberately stepped away from the day-to-day client, account management and being on calls. So yeah, it was the fires. It was like the horrible meeting about them wanting to leave, or they're angry that we've done something wrong or whatever. And I was doing that sometimes at like 11 o'clock at night, and then I would not be able to sleep afterwards, because my brain would be switched on. I would have had bright lights on my face, and just all the thoughts. So yeah, so there I was doing this. And then iOS 14 had just hit, which was like, for those who aren't in the agency space, it was like a huge blow to agencies.
Wait,
It was
what?
like,
What? iOS is a huge flow? That's crazy. What are you talking about? Oh, that's you. What? To tell you about it, right?
I was actually speaking to my new Meta rep yesterday. He was really sweet. Like, he's listening. He was awesome. But he was trying to tell me about iOS 14 update. And I was like, dude, you don't have to tell me about that. Trust me, I know. So yeah, so that was happening. Clients were like, what the hell's happened to our results? They were like looking, they were just looking for answers, and sometimes people to blame. And it was really hard sometimes to make them understand that it wasn't our fault. So yeah, there was all of that going on. But also we had this like crazy time. I don't know if you guys who are listening remember that like iOS 14 happened at the exact same time that the lockdowns ended around the world, which was when people suddenly left their houses, went out and started paying for restaurants, holidays, experiences. Their money, without spending their money, suddenly changed. And also like some of those checks people were getting cut for like not working, those kind of went away as well. The economy was totally shifting. And then you had like twice as many brands who had come online during the pandemic who were all competing. You had big brands who weren't D2C, who weren't online brands coming on. So it was an absolute like career shitstorm. And like no one knew, was it really iOS or was it really just the like pandemic ending that was causing results to be kind of bad? But what happened when the agency space was, it suddenly became super difficult to win clients. Like there was like less clients around, more agencies around, a really hard story to tell. Like we were spending so much more time on client accounts because we had to kind of like dig through more data and try and explain stuff. So all of that was going on. And I was having to like deal with all of that in my own head without my team during my day. Like literally I'd have a calendar with no meetings from 9 to 5. And yeah, I am the kind of person that I love to collaborate. I love to like figure stuff out with my team. I'm not actually much of an introvert, which is crazy because I built a remote agency. I like get energy from other people, from, clients, from team, from all of that. And there I was, I built this situation where I was like all by myself worrying about the agency with a sense of doom every day and with no one to kind of like make me feel better or bounce ideas with. And meanwhile, like profitability was dropping in the agency, and it was like, I can't, I need the leadership team because I can't run the agency without them. That are the most expensive people in the team. So I've gotten to like get the profitability back. And so eventually I had to start jumping on sales calls as well. So to add to my like list of things that I had to do after 10 p.m., I had to now like sell the agency, as in sell the, pitch our agency to potential clients. So anyway, it was the hardest one of my life ever. Like it was a really, like if I can say it, it was a really dark time. Like I literally just every day had to like keep trudging uphill, like forcing myself to get through the day and get stuff done, to market the agency, to kind of like stay positive. And then I had to like late at night, like try and make sure my team were okay, and then try and win clients, and then try and hold on to clients, all at like when I just wanted to be asleep. And I'm a mom, my kid.
And be a mom, yeah, exactly.
He was 4 years old at the time, and he needed his mum. He needed his mum in the morning when I needed to sleep, to sleep off like the fact that I'd laid awake ruminating until 2 a.m. So yeah, I was in a super dark place, and it was super hard. And, I was like, do I shut the agency down? Do I just burn it to the ground? Like all of these thoughts come. But I had 20 people like, who were relying on me for a paycheck, who were really invested in the agency. We'd built a very like mission driven, like vision focused agency that was about more than just like buying ads, but it was about like, working with clients we believed in, sustainable clients, all of that. And so I didn't want to burn it down, but I just couldn't. I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't see how I could keep going. And I guess like in parallel to this, I started to realize that like maybe I didn't really want to be an agency owner either. Like even if I had stayed in the UK, it would have been way more manageable, way more doable. But was I really happy with like the job that being an agency owner of like a 7-figure agency actually entailed? And if I was to be really honest with myself, like now in hindsight as well, like, no, I didn't. And I think now that I'm doing, back in a place where I'm loving what I'm doing, like, I think what I love is like the building phase, like that early stage of a business when the excitement is there and you're like figuring problems out and nothing is kind of like, the blueprint isn't necessarily laid out and you're like hiring and it's all kind of like firing. And the business of like maintaining an agency that's like got 20 people in it and you've got like loads of direct reports and there's a lot of process. Like sure, you can hire people for those things. And I have an amazing, I had an amazing team. Like shout out Emily, my ops manager. She really took like a lot of things off my plate. But yeah, I was like, it was sort of like, it kind of catalyzed how much I was like not happy in the role of like 7-figure agency owner anymore. And so I like was searching for answers. Should I keep going with that? The story
because I think you're gonna go to like the for change. So it's
exactly.
Don't worry, we will dive.
Yeah. So I was searching for answers, and I'm in an amazing community called the Foxwell Founders, with Andrew Foxwell, who's become like a dear friend of mine. And I think I had some like crisis calls with him, and he introduced me to some other people that had been through a similar thing. Chris McCoolin was another person that I met at the time who, was like a listening ear to me. He had actually gone through an agency acquisition really recently, and he gave me some ideas. And it was Chris McCoolin who introduced me to Tris, and he basically ended up being the guy who bought my agency. So I just made myself really like, I guess I was looking for any kind of answer, and the answer that I came to was like, I have to just sell the agency. Like, it's not maybe necessarily the best time to sell an agency, or the time when, like strategically, if you have an agency, you should probably sell it when it's like a little bit bigger than mine was, if you want to like really cash in on your effort. But I had to listen to like my family, my own well-being, my personal happiness. I couldn't just keep trying to grow this agency from afar and keep trying to like do that almost impossible late at night in order to get it to a size to maybe one day sell it. I had to like cut my losses and decide to sell. And, actually I did end up selling it for like, a good price and all of that. Maybe not just like this huge giant exit where I'm floating off on a yacht for the rest of my life. But, so I met Tris, and we kind of were a meeting of minds. He shared a lot of my values. He had that similar vision for what he wanted to do with the agency. He had a similar sized agency based in Europe, so no time zone issues there. And he was ready to like take on like the big challenge of like merging the two agencies and like taking it to the next level. And so what ensued was a few months of really like challenging times. Like selling an agency is really difficult. We could talk about that if anyone wants to hear about it or anyone wants to reach out to me to ask. you got to do a lot of like, legal stuff and documents and like financial stuff. You got to like have all your house in order and trawl through kind of like spreadsheets and put a cut-on agreement that's fair for both of you, that you're both happy with. And then you got to like put the lawyers on each other, and then they got to talk to each other or talk through you as it is. And they're charging like, like $1,000 an hour to do that. But eventually we managed it, and we got it across the line, and I sold the agency to Tris, and they're now a team of 45, and they are thriving as an agency, and the team are all, doing well. A lot of the same clients that were there with Webtopia when I handed over the keys are still with Webtopia today. So it's been a pretty successful merger. And here I am now just doing other things, which we can talk about, but just feeling a lot calmer. I have a lot more clients on my time zone now. It's all around just a much better situation and much better for me and my family. So, yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot of change in a very short amount of time. And like, for those who are listening that don't understand or haven't experienced agency life, let me put some things in perspective, what Jessie said. And thank you for sharing that, because I come from agency. I also come from brand. So I understand both sides of the coin. When you're in an agency, a lot of brands assume that agencies are sitting on this big heap of cash. They know what they're doing and it's automated, and that the margins are incredible. And it's not, actually. They did so much harder. I was a director, so I was one of those key players. I would have been under, Jessie, and I would have been the one reporting directly to her. But we feel the heart and the weight of churn. We also, 90% of my job was not being the best media buyer in the world. My job was to appease and be a therapist to so many brands and owners. And rightfully so, because as brand owners, you need to be profitable. You need to keep growing. That's why you come to an agency. It is a cost. And if you're not seeing it, you start to panic. And then the agency owner, which would be Jessie, has to make sure to hold your hand to ensure that you are going to be okay, to ensure that her business is okay as well. It is a never-ending circle. And then add on that crazy time zone. So like, my only relation to this is when I went to Dubai and communicating with my then boyfriend, now husband, the 12-hour time difference. It's no joke. And you think it's okay. Like, for me, when I was just traveling, it was fine. But I remember I was managing a team at the time. It was actually impossible. So now, and then I made a lot of notes, mind you. If anyone's watching, I'm writing notes on me. You add on time difference, okay? We just talked about that. Running an agency is already difficult as is. You've already had great success with an agency, which is in itself incredible. But then on top of that, you had the iOS issues. And just to speak really quickly, iOS 14, I loved your observation. You were saying like it could have honestly just been spending behavior, and that's what actually impacted performance versus the actual iOS 14. I love that perspective because I think it could have been both. And yeah, I believe that people buy psychologically, not economically. Right. So when we had these stimulus checks in the US for $1,000 of extra money, people go, okay, extra money. I also think the same thing with Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Like after Black Friday, Cyber Monday, people are still buying, and they're still buying for themselves because it's this addiction of pressing the button. It doesn't stop.
You have to pull the ring. The dopamine, and then they're like, I want more dopamine. Yeah.
100%. There's so many things I want to say about that story because you say it so beautifully, but I kind of want to bring the weight back to it in the sense of like how hard that is, because you breathe harder, you breathe slower, and it's like this weight that you just feel. You have to keep going through it. You have to have the endurance. The fact that you crave the building phase, I mean, not many people like that unless you have the streak of crazy, which we all do. But then, you have this agency, you have to be a mom, you have to, and that's a priority. It's a lot. You went through a lot just to come out the other end and realize I'm not happy, which is the biggest thing, though. I'm not profitable. I'm not happy. It's a big deal. So thank you for saying that. And also, Andrew Foxwell is a homie. I love Andrew Foxwell over here.
Yeah, he actually came out to visit New Zealand, like my tiny town in New Zealand, the summer just gone, and it was so amazing to meet him in person and hang out. So yeah.
That's awesome. Would you do anything different, like with all that heaviness involved? Because again, you said you have mouths to feed. You do. You want to give up personally. You're tired, sleep deprived. Also funny, you were talking about efficiencies in the workplace in terms of 4 days versus 5 days, which I really think is awesome. But you're trying to be efficient, meanwhile being the most inefficient personally.
Yeah.
And how did that feel? Like the mirror of like, shit.
Yeah. I mean, that was crazy. And like the irony of like, I want to build an agency that's about like the well-being of my team, and I'm just screwing myself over completely, was not lost on me. But yeah, like, I mean, I remember when I first got here, I was like, oh, it's so beautiful, no meetings in the day. But it's like, you don't realize you don't really know yourself, because actually those meetings with my team who I loved, and like many of my clients who I loved, jumping on the calls was actually energizing throughout the day, and having like no meetings at all really didn't work for me. But yeah, so what was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Would you do anything different?
Oh yeah. So this hindsight's 2020, as they say, right? So the most sensible thing, I think, two things. If I was to advise another agency owner in the same position, which is a weird position to be in, because who's moving to the other side of the world, but you never know. One would be either grow the agency till it's bigger. I think the ultimate mistake I made was it just wasn't quite mature enough. When I left, we were kind of just coming off that high. So we were at this, like, we kind of had our first seven-figure year, as in seven-figure run rate month. We had, we'd just been growing steadily every month over month. We'd won some really cool new clients. We were just on like a good peak, but we'd just lost one who, had not the best results through iOS 14, and were like looking for answers and had left us. And I was like, oh, that's a bit weird. That's a bit of a wobble. But like I hadn't seen any kind of true signs yet that there was going to like be kind of shaky waters ahead. But I think like the agency, you read these books like E-Myth or Clockwork that tell you can like totally automate your whole agency, and you can stick away. And so I was like inspired by that and thought that I could do that. But I think in hindsight, an agency is a very like founder-led, founder-involved type of a business model. And of course people step away and like automate and find people to look after the business, but maybe not at the size we were at and the maturity we were at. We probably needed to have been around for longer, to have more stuff kind of like, definitely more kind of like client acquisition automated. And maybe I would have actually needed to hire a CEO to take over from the CEO role in country, to be there to like mentor the team. That would be one thing I potentially do differently, is just like have to wait till it's bigger. But I wouldn't have wanted to wait. I wouldn't have wanted to wait till my son was 7 or 8 to move. I wanted to move when he was still little, so he could start school here. So personally, that wouldn't have worked. And then the other option, I guess, like I would potentially do differently, is I could have sold it before I left. So I could have said, right, we're at this stage, let's sell it and then move to a new country. I wouldn't have.
For you to realize that you.
And then I wanted to sell it. Exactly.
Exactly.
And the silver lining of moving countries, I think, actually was the reason why I was able to sell so easily. So an agency owner who comes to me and says, like, I want to sell my agency, what should I do? My advice could be to them, like, pretend you're moving to 12-hour time difference. Like, pretend you're not going to be able to get on, you're like physically not going to be able to get on very many client calls. You're physically not going to be able to be the salesperson for your business anymore. And you can only really talk to your direct reports and not like be involved in the day-to-day with the team management. Pretend that's the case and run your agency like that for a year or a year and a half. And then your agency will be really honed and ready to sell, because you can tell the story to the future owner that you're not involved, that the clients aren't really that involved with you, that the team aren't sort of super like, connected with you on a regular basis, and that the agency will run itself without you. And so I was genuinely able to tell, potential buyers that and show them they had this leadership team, the systems were there, it wasn't all kind of dependent on me. I mean, it was to an extent, but like they could step into the parts of the role that I was doing. So in a way, it meant that I was able to sell.
That was actually such a cool point you just made, because And this goes with any size business, right? I believe like the lifetime value of a business versus the so the ability to grow. Let's just go from there. The ability to grow is the ability to do what Jessie just said. Have the business run without you. And often, and you said it perfectly, agencies are a very personalized thing. So there's a reason why there's giant agencies and there's boutique agencies. And then there's someone in the mid-between that isn't able to break the ceiling because they're too much, the CEO's too heavily involved. They're the face.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, I've seen this time and time again. There's caveats to both, right? Like if you're too big, people feel like there's no personal relation to you. That's a number. It's not really helping. The second side of things is going to be if you're too small, you're so involved. So how many times the CEO, I mean, I'm a CEO right now and I'm getting on personalized calls with clients all the time. I want to do that as long as I can until I can't.
Yeah.
But I also know that in AdBeacon, in terms of wanting to be acquired down the road, to be able to be something bigger, like you were able to do with Webtopia, you have to take a step back because somebody else who takes the reign is able to feel it. That's a very difficult thing to do and to realize. And you have to think of it, even for my husband and his business that he's involved in, sometimes because they have to speak with clients every single day. They're winemakers, and then his brother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So different. It's so different. Thank God. Thank God, Bessie. I don't need to date another D2C or marry another D2C person. But, in that moment, I think he needs to realize, and they need to realize, they have to take a step back. And the team should be able to be self-sufficient in order for them to take on 15, 16 more clients, because the clients will know they've got a running ship and then their brains are being maximized for the things that they're being hired for, not to do the day-to-day BS. But I thought that was really, really cool that you touched on. So thank you.
No worries.
I guess my next question for you is, you have this wealth of knowledge. If someone's coming up in the space and they're like, Jessie, do I work agency or do I work contractor first? What would you suggest in today's market? Because we talked about COVID, iOS 14, hypersaturation of this market. Now, what do you think?
So you mean someone who wants to break into being a media buyer?
Sure. Yeah, we'll say break into media buyer.
It's interesting. I think a good agency will provide a great foundation for doing learning the skills of the trade and learning the ropes of having kind of a system for managing your clients. But it depends on the kind of person, right? So I had never worked in an agency when I started my agency, and that became kind of my catchphrase when I was pitching to brands, was I created that. I used to work brand side. I created the agency that I wanted when I was a brand. I didn't kind of grow up in an agency and then just create another agency that looked like all the others. So for me, it worked well coming at it kind of cold and coming at it having been on the brand side. I think if someone was coming out of uni and wanting to get into this, I would probably say personally working in an agency would be a great way to get exposure to lots of different clients, learn the systems, etc. But if you're a total self-starter, being a media buyer is a pretty great route for someone who's just really entrepreneurial and wants to work on their own time, not have a manager, all of that. I would say though, if you've got to do that, join a community like Foxwell's. There's lots of other great communities out there helping people to learn the ropes of both media buying, but also client management, right? Because it's 50% media buying, if even that. Like you said, 50% of it is managing your clients and having the systems to make sure you've got the right answers for them and you can help them. That you're not always sort of flying by the seat of your pants. So, yeah, that would be my advice. Depends on the person.
You, again, so stoked that you're on this podcast because there's a couple different things too. Number one is you were able to understand that there's a creative side that never really went aligned with the data side. So we always have this debate in the media buying world that the creative team doesn't talk to the media buying team because they have two different initiatives. The purpose of one is to create community and the other purpose is to drive performance, which is profit, right? And often they don't speak to each other because they don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
And you were able to merge that. That in itself is a unicorn. I personally believe the role of a successful media buyer in 2024 and on is going to be 3 parts, like a pyramid. It's one that's creatively driven, right? So creative, creative as in ads. Okay. The other component is going to be data. And the last component is going to be customer service. And often what I would do as the director of, paid social and organic social, I did the thing that everybody does in favor. I would hire people that had no experience, but were really great at speaking to clients. You can't teach those skills.
Yeah.
It's so hard to find someone who is comfortable speaking to people and comfortable taking on that load. That is the hardest part of the job, in my opinion, because media buyers are already hard on themselves and performance isn't doing well.
Yeah.
So you've got the other side, the psychological and emotional weight on yourself that brands do. Like, they yell at you, they scream at you, they tell you that you're the reason why they're going to go under this month, when in reality, you're not, you're a
You feel like you are. You feel like it's interesting, like when you're a media buyer and like things are going badly, you feel it's all your fault. And then when things are going well, you're like, oh, they've got a great product, or, they're doing that. There's organic social and they email really well, or whatever. Yeah. Because the last thing with
and it's fun to watch, like, media buyers become more seasoned and you start to watch them be a little more calloused too. They're not mean, but they're a little bit more, instead of asking like, what would you like me to do? They started going, do you want to make money? This shift in so I would like to end this out. There's also one other segment of hot takes, but I would kind of round this out of, did something change in your DNA that you feel like as a person when all of this was happening? Because it is heavy and you changed it, and obviously you're no longer with the agency, but what changed for you?
I think it's interesting. Like, it's an interesting question. I don't know. I've not really reflected on it exactly, but I guess one thing maybe that changed is, like, I think when you're growing an agency, and like maybe as a woman as well, but maybe just in general, you can kind of like get caught up in the hype of like, look at me, I'm an agency owner. I'm like, I've got all these clients that are paying me money and I'm like successful, whatever. And it's almost like it can become like an ego thing. And so when I sold the agency, I had to realize that I wouldn't have that identity anymore. Then I realized it didn't really matter. Like, my friends don't really care. I said to my friend something the other day, one of my best friends, and I mentioned something when Webtopia did this, and she's like, Webtopia. And I was like, oh, that was my banana like agents. She doesn't really care at all. She just cares that I'm happy and that, I have time to hang out with her. So, like, at the end of the day, it's in your own mind that the glory or whatever that you have for being an agency owner, like, the LinkedIn props you get for that. And you create your own reality, really, and the people around you that care about you and your family. And so you've got to act for them first, for yourself and for your community and your people, not for like the people on Twitter or LinkedIn who are like following you, whatever.
That's so good. 100%. So I don't know if you know this, I used to be a model, and very similar to what you just said, I stopped modeling and I stopped getting invitations to things. So, you start to realize, and you have to kind of go through, you said ego. It's like this identity woven into what you do, not who you are. And that's so scary because, Jessie Healy, and I've said this on multiple episodes, Jessie Healy, whatever she ends up doing is Jessie Healy, right? She could have a donut shop one day, and then she can have another agency another day, and she might be part of an accelerator program another day, but it's still Jessie Healy. Now, if it was Jessie Healy with just Webtopia, we're having a completely different conversation. So people who kill themselves over and like both, unfortunately, physically and mentally, you're killing yourself. You push this entity rather than who you are as a person, your personal brand. Crazy. And when I started getting invites to stuff, it really opened my eyes. Of course, there's a side that's a bummer where you're like, who am I without this title? But then you go, wait a minute, who the fuck cares? And then you start to grow up, and I love that you took that as the change, and I appreciate that. But we're going to the last segment, and it is called Hot Takes. I like it spicy. It can either be personal, again, in the space. You just said something about Twitter, which I love. What is your hot take right now, whether it be in the D2C space or just in life?
Oh, it's a hard one. What is my hot take? God. I guess it's not exactly a hot take, but a thing that I'm like burning to figure out. And I'm hoping tools like AdBeacon can help me.
Yeah.
But I've just had so much doubt about brand traffic and PMAX brand for the longest time. And like a brand I'm working with now is like an in-house head of growth, pretty much spends all of their Google budget on like brand PMAX. And I want to answer the question finally, like, is it incremental and is that budget actually driving like new customers to us? And my, I guess, hot take is, screw you, Google. I think that you're just taxing us and spending our money. But I have to be careful, right? I can't just like go in there and turn it all off and like then our revenue tanks. But chatted to another friend of mine, Rahul, the other day, and he was saying that he tested it for a brand, an apparel brand, turned off brand PMAX and brand traffic, no impact on their total revenue. So that's my hot take is if you haven't tried it, do some holdout tests, do some testing around branded traffic on Google and see if that budget, if it was put at the top of the funnel, could actually drive you more new customers in the long run.
Okay, so I'll piggyback off what Jessie said. I would give you a framework for testing. I believe that in order for you to truly understand the impact of something via attribution, in AdBeacon, you're actually we tell you how long it takes for a client or customer to convert from first touch to last. Okay, you deduce it down by channel. So let's just pretend that Google is 23 days. Turn off brand for 23 days. That is the only way you can cleanly see that, because you might be in day 7 of 23. You only turn it off for 7. Now you're throwing off the whole journey. There's going to be trickle from in and out. The 23 is not going to be perfect, but at least it gives you a cleaner perspective on what's going on within that timeline. So I agree with you, because I had we had a debate. I've had multiple debates, let's be honest, with this one brand owner, and he's like, Phoenix, I turned off Facebook ads for 3 days and it did nothing to my store. And I'm like, okay. And then my nerdy side came on. I was like, well, what's the length of time it usually takes for a customer to convert? And it's like 7 to 14 days. I was like, okay, so why didn't you turn it off 7 to 14 days? He's like, I can't do that. I was like, aha, there it is. There's an impact here. And if you truly did the test, you would have done it that way. So piggyback off what Jessie's saying, I don't think it's a hot take. That's a real take.
Yeah,
Good.
sure.
That's good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I know that whoever's listening is taking a lot from this. And if you're not, re-listen to this podcast, guys. Come on, get it together. That being said, how can people communicate with you? How can they find out more about you and learn from you?
Sure. So my website is jessiehealy.com. That's Healy. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. You search my name, Jessie Healy. And I show up most days on both of those platforms. So I'm there to hang out and interact.
Yeah, you're a wealth of knowledge on Twitter as well. So everybody who follows Jessie, you're welcome. We're just reiterating the obvious. And those who don't, please follow her. I'm one of those followers, and I get to watch how she helps the community daily. So really grateful for that. All right, Jessie. And also, guys, don't forget to subscribe to the Fail with Fire podcast. I always forget to say this. I just think this is a fun conversation with friends. But do that so you can listen in for more guests like Jessie. That being said, Jessie, thank you for blessing us with this. And I hope you guys have a great week.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.